So Dr. Murlidhar, you touched on teaching part, and which is obviously very important, be it in institute or university. And you yourself have been an excellent teacher. And so, in your opinion, what would you say to become a good teacher? What do you need other than deep understanding of the subject? What else you need to convey, or inspire students to pursue research?
Yeah, couple of things. No doubt, deep understanding and probably correct understanding of the subject matter, domain knowledge is essential. That is a prerequisite. There itself you will see 50 to 60% of the teachers fail in that. They do not have an understanding of the subject. As usual, they have been learning by reading some textbook, 20-year-old textbook, and they remember that partially and they vomit. That is the first problem. Even if you have deep understanding, you look at the learning context, which is the laboratory or the classroom or the field. The learning context here is that I must discover something. I must create new knowledge. The job of the teacher or the university system is not just to consolidate knowledge, it is also to create new knowledge. And that will come only if you have a questioning mind. If the questioning mind the teacher has, he will transmit it to the students. But more important for Indian context, major part of the input in the audience, that means classrooms and all, they are coming from lower middle class. Let us not discuss any problem without the context of the national economic level of this country. In America, some of you must have studied, you pay through your nose $1,000 per credit. Here we have tuition fees which is 18 rupees or 20 rupees for last 100 years, and with that you will have to impart high quality education, number one, because the audience is coming from lower middle class, and therefore a good teacher who has to transform this has to have an additional mindset, a quality, compassion. If you have no compassion for whom the people whom you are training, it may be PhD guide, it may be postdoctoral guide, it may be MSc class, BSc class, school children, anything. You must have compassion. My motto had always been that if my students fail in the exam, I fail in the exam. So if you are not able to convert a donkey into a horse, you are not a teacher. That is important and that is missing. And to aggravate the problem, in the educational technology, people are using certain phrases that we should have ICT in the education. In other words, they are trying to replace the teacher with the tape recorder or virtual labs or computer aided things, and that is where we are missing the role of teacher. You can have any amount of all these things. Ultimately, you need the teacher to explain, clarify. Students are there, they also know it. After all, they can also do the button and get all this information. But what they need is clarification. They have doubts. The tape recorder will not answer. That is where the role of teacher is there. Therefore, good teachers not only understand their subject, because over a period of time they have synthesized the subject by culling information from variety of sources, from primary experience of the research on the bench, and therefore they present it as a historical event of a linked ideas which have grown into this field. And they have compassion that I want to turn out some of them into Einsteins. Therefore, you put in effort.
So you briefly touched upon, so now in modern times, students are really, they are exposed to too much technology and they have access to a lot of information. So do you think teacher can play a role that they can assimilate this information efficiently and correctly? And then some of it actually can be useful. So do you think teacher can have a role in guiding them to make use of modern technology and get better?
Sure, only teacher has a role. You can't dispense with the teacher. See, there is a paradox here. On one hand, we say this is information explosion, because by a press of the button, I can know anything that in this world on any topic. Wikipedia is one such example. You will get stupid information, but that is the information explosion. Now if a raw child, young child where the brain is blank, whatever enters, it will stay there. But if it does not get filtered by proper interpretation and what is important, what is information, what is knowledge, what is wisdom, there the teacher has to be there. So you can't make a student learn everything through computer, through internet, through all this available information. Impossible. There are no examples like that. They have to go through some good teacher at some stage. The so-called self-learning comes after BSc. Unfortunately, in this country, even in PhD, because most of the PhDs are basically guidance means cookbook procedures are given and then they are asked to do, execute, and some guides also like that we have. I can quote the biggest name in this, Hargovind Khurana. Their labs work 3 shifts. So you work 8 hours as a postdoc, he will give you the instruction, 8 hours later he needs the data. He is not, you are not involved in even in paper writing. That also, that means there are people who are running their labs like factories. Big shots, small shots, middle shots, everybody is there. All this is wrong. You want a good student, you will have to allow him to think and do things, which means time is essential, stimulating him is essential, creating an ambience is essential, creating all access to facilities is essential. Then you see wonders will come. Every student will be a good scientist, which will not happen. Your promotional rules have to change first. I still believe that promotion means taking care of your social problems and responsibilities. There should be only 2 ranks, and the entry rank and the other rank, which is a recognition that you are an accomplished academic leader. Until the proof of that comes, don't get into this professorial designations. That's it. So then people will not worry about, salary keeps increasing every year. So you have no worries about your life. Focus on the lab and do work, and that should be recognized. That's the way we do it. But the existing policies don't address these questions at all. If you see the latest UGC policies for promotion, ridiculous actually. You publish a paper, it's called point system. You publish a paper, you will get 10 points. You arrange a national conference, you will get 100 points. So there are people who are perpetually arranging seminars. We collect points and become a professor. So we have become vulgar almost. The primary objective is forgotten completely. They don't even understand what is this word seminar. None of us should conduct seminars. Seminar is something that what transacts in a seminary is called a seminar. So you go to those monks, both Christian and Hindu, they sitting in caves and remote places, they deliberate on higher ethereal issues. That is called seminar. But most of the scientists always do for gossip seminars, national seminars, international seminars, depending upon your funding. So we have made everything perverse. When do you organize a seminar or a conference? When you have something to reveal. In a given domain knowledge, you have come up with something new and which you want to announce to your peers, so that they will say, okay, this is new. For that reason, we have to arrange a conference. In other words, if you analyze like that, 99 out of 100 people have no business to arrange any seminar. They should not. They simply work. But we don't do. Most of us are busy with organizing conferences. That's the problem.
So, a while back you touched upon a serious issue actually, just very briefly, that Indian, because you've seen interacted with students.
That's so the only thing which I have privilege. 40 years, every year I see young people, I get excited and keeps my spirit up. Otherwise, teaching, as most people have reduced it to a repetitive action. That first 5 years there is excitement, afterwards the whole thing is in by hearted. So they reduce teaching to that morose work. We are very, very lucky. Every year you see these 21-year-old kids coming and they have all sorts of questions, and that keeps you busy if you are sincere. And that's the privilege which I enjoy. Even though my hair is grey, I am very young in heart.
So I was coming to that in Indian system, the students are generally believe that we are poor in communicating, either writing or orally. So do you think we could do something as a teachers or as a university system that to improve that situation? So
Yeah.
they can
We
and
can
can
do
be
it.
implemented earlier in their career so that they don't suffer at PhD level when they are forced to do both actually.
Absolutely. Not only we can do it, but we should also understand the so-called root of the problem. See, in every diverse society, America, India are typical examples where there is a lot of cultural diversity, language diversity. India has more than 500 languages, all right, and other types of diversities. And with this arises a question, what language should I learn in the rest of my life? So, your first part focus will be mother tongue, but there are a lot of migratory populations, so they are confused. So, they will pick up a regional language. In a diverse country, this becomes aggravating problem, and then you have policies and all, forgetting the basic thing that except for learning a language in a MA or BA course, science you have no choice, you have to be English, good in English, because science is global. The only largest circulating language is English. Most of the discoveries, inventions have come from English speaking people. There could be exceptions, I am not saying that. In other words, the mastery of this language seems to be closely connected to your productivity in terms of quality science. And the second important thing is that science, even if you produce good science but hide it in your lab, nobody will recognize. A science which is not communicated is as good as dead. Like, in a little exaggerated way, if you do not publish, who knows that you are doing something? Therefore, it is important. Therefore, the crux of learning science is also learning how to communicate science. So, one is that you should learn English language, the best of the investments, and there should be special courses we do give. In the restructuring of BSc, which we undertook 10 years back in Delhi University, we introduced a special paper in the BA, BSc everywhere, technical writing, English for technical writing and communication, where we tell people, train them by case studies, what is a good paper, what is a good speech, what is a good lecture, how to do this as far as science is concerned. This training is given. There are a lot of things, because Indians are notorious for using not just wrong English, but actually failing to communicate what noble ideas they had, because the language was not, they were not proficient in the language. You need to have a certain felicity of words, otherwise you can't communicate. So, we should train this, because all this as learnt behavior, any learnt behavior we should train. It is possible to train. There is no, you introduce papers like that. Even during my own PhD days, I was taught German by a German professor, I was taught English by an Englishman for science, because they took science very seriously, Indian Institute of Science. But most of the universities, it is one more job. That is why we have this poor quality. And learn thing along with the idiom, then only you get. For example, you can't be an expert in Indology without knowing a word of Sanskrit. Impossible. You look at all what Williams has done, Max Muller has done, they became Sanskrit Pandits. So, then only you can understand the Indology and its complications. Same way science, English is absolutely necessary. There is no choice. However patriotic I may be for my native tongue or mother tongue, or that does not replace, because vocabulary is deficient in many of these languages. Even people like Japanese, French, who transact some amount of science in their native language, they have also realized that when you export them to USA, the ultimate dreamland, English counts. That is how Indian postdocs are much more wanted than Chinese postdocs. They work much harder than us, but their proficiency in English, Korea, China, way behind Indians, which simply says that we should be good in English. So, why do not we train them properly? Connected to this is the political interference. There are, I don't have to tell names, people in their over jealous emotion, that patriotism and their love for mother tongue have banished English in many states in the country. What they are doing is putting the young generation at stake. You have ruined their future if you want them to be science. Supposing you want them to be a Hindi poet or a Telugu poet or a Tamil poet, no problem. You don't need. But now we know that 50% of the population is usually moving around. In whatever name you talk, they are moving around. So, lot of people go to different corners of the country, leave alone abroad. If you don't know a common language, what is that you communicate? So, some of those government policies also have to be looked into to encourage people. There is no harm, don't abuse English because it is a foreign language. No more, which is a native language here? If you go into details, I don't think so. 7 races have populated India. So, basically it is a land of immigrants. There is no original Indian. I teach a course, Introduction to South Asian Studies in the present university. So, we marshal data, anthropological data, genetic data, gene transfer across language barriers, human migration, human evolution, to show that these South Asians are all one. We should not fight among ourselves. That is the course I teach.
So that's one problem, and another one is actually which is forced by the competitive world now. The mantra, which almost everybody knows, the publish or perish, and then it has actually forced students and scholars to do apply means which are not necessarily right means to produce data, and so my question is how important is integrity and science ethics. So, and what's the role and how early can we teach students to think about it? That it's not okay to copy somebody's introduction.
See, the issue that you raised is there are a lot of dimensions, many dimensions about it. It's not a simple thing which elicits a straightforward answer. You made a comment that publish or perish. It comes from the signals that come from the so-called leaders who will, for promotions or for any other reward and award system, if you emphasize quantity, that kind of a comment comes that if you don't publish, you will not get anything. So, we went through that phase also, publish or perish, and then the government policy changed and we gave wrong signals. No, take patent or perish. And then we are now in the third phase, publish, patent and perish. That is what we are doing, because people are confused. If you go by ideals, knowledge, you should not make business out of knowledge. Anything that you know, share it. It cannot be commercialized. But we learnt all these tricks from Americans and the Europeans who gave the original science for us, and now they are also telling us, make it a business. Any small thing you know, go and take a patent and make money out of that. We fell into that trap also in the 15 years back when Mashalkar was the CSR DG. That became the point. Anybody, university or anywhere, take patent first. So, a lot of people got patents. They were only filed. There was no taker. 99 out of these 100 patents did not see a manufacturing industry coming forward that I will make some product out of this. You look at biotechnology, number of patents filed, number of commercially available products. Take it, nothing is there. There is no correlation between them. Because of the wrong signals, these things have come. That what you have to do simple, I look for quality in your science, that's all, forget it. You publish one paper but extremely outstanding, I will make you professor. You give that assurance, then people will not go after this cellulose which they are publishing, which you can put it in the waste basket, nobody will read. And they cover it up by saying impact factor is high. You should look at citation, not impact factor. You may publish in a high impact factor, but nobody is reading that paper. What is the meaning of that? But you sell that point and get a professorship. No? In other words, the judgment also seemed to, people have not analyzed anything. That's why all these problems are coming. Added to this, now the recent aggravation, I am sure whether it is a student or a professor or whoever it is, the social system is a system of awards and rewards every stage, and that has created blood pressure. I don't know, I have seen our students, they are going through nightmares absolutely, because the demand is do well and publish here, there and all. In fact, many people start their project with the journal in mind. So, they write the paper and then fill up the figures and tables. This also goes on, big labs they are doing. The whole point is the students, the guide and the in between people and the policy maker, everything, everybody is going through blood pressure, because you have artificially created the tension. That, and one of the shortcuts that people are taking to satisfy this demand is what she probably, hidden agenda, she asked me about the ethics problem. So, that is a very big issue. To begin with, intellectual integrity is something missing in India usually. Most of the Indians, however big scholarly they are, they do not understand this phrase intellectual integrity, that when I say something, it exactly is what I am thinking. There is a dichotomy there. One of my teachers used to say that Indians use language to hide their thoughts, not to express. A great teacher of mine. Precisely, if you do this by default, you essentially are telling something and doing something else. In other words, if you say practice of science, for example, translate this word there and apply it, integrity here means that your data is reliable. If you forget that every experiment, that after all, you look at science, physics, chemistry, biology, day in and day out we do only one experiment, measurement. You measure something, height, I measure volume, somebody measures concentration, somebody measures melting point. Practically people are measuring. Measurement is the foundation of science. And if that measurement is not followed by criteria of reliability, precision, accuracy, specificity, sensitivity, you are doing something without any aim. It is almost like buying a sabji wala. He will keep a stone there and say "Hada kilo." It has no meaning. He does not understand that he is not standardized to that. Science cannot be done like that. So, when some people, without understanding that integrity component, they start adjusting the data. Under pressure, call it anything, or under ambition. When ambition overtakes competence, you do all this kind of silly things. So, that is, they adjust the data. Some of them immature, very childish, plagiarism. They copy something, publish somewhere else, thinking nobody notices. Today, with the kind of softwares available, you can make it out in 2 seconds that you have copied the whole thing, but it goes on. Today, if you see PhD, unfortunately, you go to any student, there are exceptions for every statement. You show me your thesis, he will tell you that bound volume which he has submitted, this is my thesis. There is no thesis there, it is only PhD. A PhD cannot be given without a thesis. Thesis means the new hypothesis that you are testing in your research work. There are people who turned out massive data without a question. That is what I call, these are PhDs, they are no thesis. These things we have to avoid. We have to understand what is thesis. So, if we do research like that without a research component, collecting data becomes the end in itself, then you adjustment and all this kind of things, which there are serious. If you see the number of retractions from high impact factor journals, much more than those poor journals where now nobody looks at them, say Indian Journal of Biochemistry or Indian Journal of Experimental Biology. People don't have, they have less than contempt, because they say, acha nahi, you should publish in Cell, you should publish in Journal of Immunology or Nature, Science, something. It is nothing wrong, and I am not saying the ranking system is wrong. No, they are good journals. The whole point is, why is it that more retractions are coming from here? Obviously, people were in a hurry to do that. There, intellectual integrity is something missing, which is not good actually. Take that Korean example of Huang or anybody. I can, before you were all born in 1950s, people were asking very simple questions, where are proteins made and all that. So autoradiography and this kind of metabolic labeling showed that they are all on the ribosomes. And then the concept of message came, because nucleic acid language is sitting in the nucleus, whereas the protein language is in the cytoplasm. So you need a translation. People discovered messenger RNA and all those things. At that point there was a very simple problem. Are all proteins made out of ribosomal pathway? There were exceptions already, glutathione and others, they are only enzymatic process. There is no ribosome, there is no messenger RNA. But a group in Hawaii, East West University, published a PNAS paper. This is the length of the messenger RNA for gramicidin, a peptide antibiotic which is not synthesized on the ribosomes. They produced the mRNA and characterized it on a PNAS paper, totally cooked up. So these are the shocking things. So when you do force a student to do that, he will only become that type of scientist, thinking that is the norm. So norms have to be established by the teacher. That is why even the guide is in a way a teacher. Teacher is the most important. He not only imparts science and the way to do science, it also imparts what is called scientific method, which is what we began. We imported science, we missed the luggage, scientific temper. Integrity is missing. We are good in writing scholarly treatise, not good in intelligence based, integrity based investigation. We don't. It takes some time. We are hardly 66 years old.